airports have not maintained the expertise and the contact and the close integration with ANSPs. And now it's changing. I think what we hear from our members is that it's critical for them to rebuild those links, to work in a more integrated way with ANSPs.
So in some airports, and I'm thinking of, I think it's Birmingham, it might be Manchester or the other. In fact, it's the airport that provides the tower services, does the TANs, as it's called.
Yeah, Birmingham has chosen to do it itself, yes. But UK is a bit peculiar because in the UK...
In so many ways.
Let's not go there too much.
But let's talk about cricket later, perhaps.
But in the UK, I think it's one of the very few places in Europe where airports are actually have a responsibility for ATC.
Shouldn't that be the case around Europe? Or what's your view on that? Is that good or bad?
Well, I think it's good in terms of maximizing the throughput and getting more efficient use of the capacity of our ground infrastructure.
Why isn't every airport doing what they've done in the UK?
Well, because in other countries they don't have the legal remits to do that. I mean, it's the ATC is not in the hands of the airport. It's in the hands of ANSPs. So you have to work with ANSPs too.
But what are the airports doing to try to make that happen? I mean, we have seen in the UK, I think, much better coordination, probably higher throughput.
I think it's an issue that is coming now clearly on the agenda of many airports. I think they're trying to rebuild if they've lost it, the expertise in ATM matters. And establish a closer link with ANSPs. I think for us, one of the key aspect or key feature was the ACDM, Airport Collaborative Decision Making. I thought
you were talking about that old rock band, but
but that was a trigger to work into that direction. And as ACI would like to take this even to another level, to what we call the ground coordinator. Because ACDM is very tactical and it's only airside, but we think we should move towards what we call the total airport management, when you have that integration not just on the airside but also in respect to the land side and even access to the airport. And then you can even push that further away and use it as just not in terms of tactical tool, but also strategic tool in terms of coordinating planning and investment. Because at the moment, a lot of NSPs goes their way, making their plans and their investment, and airports are not necessarily informed or aware, and vice versa.
Is it? I mean, one of the things that I think we saw with Birmingham was that they used the fact that they control the tower as a competitive element. The airport was able to say, to airlines, you'll get an integrated service, etc.
Well, I think it's very important you're saying that, because that touches right to the core of why there is now increased interest from airports into ATM, and why for us it's crucial to get better integrated in terms of operations with the ATM system. It's because it's about a competitive position. Because when you go after airlines and try to get them to fly from your airport, airlines are looking at what we call the total visiting cost of operating at an airport, and efficiencies play a very big part, ground efficiencies in that picture. So it's clearly an issue with the competitive advantage that an airport can have.
So you're tipping into another area I'm really interested in, which is that I know it's the ACI position that airports compete with each other. And I also know it's the airline position.
It's not the ACI position, it's the reality.
Oh, okay, I do beg your pardon. But it's also the reality that the airline's position on this is that airports are natural monopolies. I mean, no one. What do you say?
Well, I think they're the last ones to believe that, to be honest. When you have, 2014, it's 8 years ago. No, 4 years ago, sorry. The Commission, in its stated guidelines, recognized that airports competed, and for that reason decided to curb public financing into airports. So, I think if you ask to any airport CEO, they leave airport competition on a daily basis. I mean, we now have 90% of airports offering rebates and incentives to attract airline traffic.
90%.
Yeah. If why would they be obliged to do that if there was no competition?
I blame Michael O'Leary for that personally.
Well, he's been good at it.
He certainly worked it.
He's been good at it. No, but I think There's always been a degree of competition between regional airports, certainly, because those airports have always had a harder time to attract traffic and retain it. But what we've seen with the evolution of the airlines business model in the wake of liberalization is that, you know, those competitive pressures have moved up market. And they're a reflection of what the local carriers have done. I mean, if today in Europe, if you look at who's giving us growth at the airport, it's the local carriers. So that means, you know, if you're an airport today in Europe, wherever you're located and whatever your size, you're going after the same airline, local carriers.
Yeah, right.
You know, I remember a discussion in our board 5 years ago, you know, the CEO of Frankfurt telling us, no, the local carriers, Ryanair, I think they will never come to Frankfurt, you know. And well, here we are today, 5 years later. Ryanair has established a base at Frankfurt, and they're a major growth driver for the airport. So you can't ignore them. And actually, because they're the only one actually really growing, you know, if you want to grow at an airport, you go after those guys.
And I mean, so I'm assuming that Frankfurt is one of the 90% of airports offering airlines rebates,
They do.
discounts and so forth.
Commercially driven.
But well, of course. But the other great tension then in all of this, of course, is slots, because the airports and arguably the ANSP itself builds the capacity at the airport. But explain what is a slot and how do we allocate them?
What is a slot?
Yes.
The slot is a right granted to an airline to use the runway at a certain time.
Granted by whom?
Granted by independent coordinators.
Now, who simply picked up the old system that the airlines invented for themselves.
Well, that's the thing. I think, you know, we have a fundamental problem with the slot rules as they stand today, as they are enshrined in the current EU regulation, because basically those rules have been made by incumbent airlines for incumbent airlines. And so they're not very competitive, pro-competitive. They're not geared necessarily to the best use of airport capacity. There are significant windfall profits for certain airlines with the rules as they stand today. And as airports, we've been kept out of the system, you know, for years. It's crazy if you think, because this is, you know, the slot rules dictates the way basically our assets are being used and how their throughput can be maximized. And yet we as airports are kept out of the system.
Yes, and as I say, it's you by building new runways, building new terminals or whatever, and the ANSP that actually drive. And
I would go even further in the sense that I think the system is very perverse, because it actually perverse. It incentivizes airlines not to support capacity extension, because you know, if you sell a slot pair for $80 million. That slot pair is valued that much because the airport is congested. The moment you have new capacity, you know, the value of that slot drops.
Ask Mr. Walsh.
No scarcity rent.
Ask Mr. Walsh if he wants to run
plus the fact that many airlines are actually putting the value of their slots in their balance sheet. So, you know, I think it's not a system that is geared to, you know, wider societal benefits, certainly.
And you know, allow me an editorial, if a windfall gain is evidence that the system isn't working efficiently every single time. So talking about Heathrow, talking about Mr. Walsh, he was famously a couple of months ago said he doesn't want fancy airports. He's perfectly happy with a shed in a field.
Well, I don't think that's what his customers want, but, you know, and you know, it's been proven that this is not what passengers want.
How? Proven where?
Well, I mean, if you look at our ratings in terms of quality of service for Europe's airports over the past 20 years, they've gone up tremendously. And actually, you know, if you have a good airport which provides good, pleasant service to passengers, it's actually a way to make that airports cheaper as well. Because we depend on aeronautical revenues. The charge is paid by airline or passengers, but we've come to depend increasingly on non-aeronautical revenues, commercial revenues, you know. So what passengers and visitors spend at the airport, which is not linked to the aeronautical activity. And I mean, all the studies we've done show that, you know, a happy passenger is a passenger that is going to spend more. So an happy passenger is not, even if you're blocked for 45 minutes at the security lines, you know, you're not going to be in good mood, and all the figures show that you know, you're not going to spend. I mean, it's very interesting. It's mathematical. You know, when you reach you pass a certain number of minutes waiting at the security line, we see the spend per passenger going down.
But yet somehow we still manage to always have massive security queues, or so it would seem.
Yeah, but that's because we keep adding security requirements.
Who's the we in that sentence? Who keeps adding?
Well, it's governments. You know, we've been trying to engage with governments and with the EU on radically changing the philosophy of our security system, because now basically we treat everybody as a potential terrorist, and we apply the same kind of security checks almost to everybody. So, you know, every single grandmother is going to Mallorca in the summer is assumed to be a terrorist and needs to be checked.
You can never be too careful.
Indeed.
You can never be too careful.
But basically...
You don't know some of the grandmothers I know.
Are terrible. Don't go there. But, you know, I think this is a massive dispersion of energy and resources. And this is not conducive to the most effective security system. Because in doing that, we're actually not focusing on those people which potentially represent a bigger threat than your grandmother. So, you know, I think today with technology, datification, artificial intelligence, you know, right at the corner, we have a fantastic opportunity to change, to have a paradigm change in our security system, and to actually design the system to target and to focus on those passengers that are potentially a risk. And of course, I'm not saying that, you know, it means that your grandmother would never go through security check, but it means that, you know, you need to do this coupled with more unpredictability as well.
Yeah. But just to come back to the other point in that.
Just one thing I would like to add for the people in the room in terms of the cost implications for us. Security is 25% of our operating cost, between 20 and 25%.
25%.
Before 9/11, it was 5%.
Wow. And you're still employing the same number of people. You know, I've always assumed that the people who do security at airports get their training in the post office or somewhere like that.
Well, I mean, it's a valid point you raise. It's a difficult issue because these are low-paid jobs.
Yeah.
And the problem is nobody wants to pay for these jobs to be higher paid.
Yeah.
You know.